G'day guys, Tyson from Head for the Hills here. Today, I want to take you through 5 more things that you can check on your bike to make sure that your School Sports SA Mountain Bike Championships race is as stress-free and enjoyable as possible. I'm going to talk about the tyres and the chain, as well as a few other really easy to identify issues that unfortunately take far too many people out of the race when they really don't have to. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight in. Looking after your suspension is not something that should be left to just before the race. It is actually something you should be doing after every single ride. And it is dead easy. The main thing you want to do is keep this area here nice and clean. That's your dust wiper seal, and it is designed to keep all the dust outside of your suspension and prevent it from getting in here. So, funnily enough, dust is just like sandpaper. And when your suspension is working, that is eating away at that beautiful smooth surface that makes your suspension work so well. By keeping this area nice and clean, you are keeping your suspension in tip-top condition and increasing its lifetime dramatically. So all you got to do, get a rag, wipe around there, feed it through, give it a bit of a floss, and you're done. Do both sides. It takes 10 seconds, and your bike will thank you. The other thing to keep an eye out for when you are looking after your suspension is any oil that's leaking out of the seals here or here. Now, a little bit isn't always a bad thing, but anything more than a little bit is not a good thing. Now, it may not be critical, but you really want to get your suspension looked at sooner rather than later, because if it gets dry in there, you can do way more damage than you need to. So get on top of it quickly, get that suspension looked at, fixed, and you'll be back in business in no time. If you are running a tubeless tyre setup on your bike, and you probably know if you are, it will definitely pay to check your sealant levels. Now, if you haven't done that in the last few months, it's very likely going to be low or potentially even bone dry. And that is really bad news if you get a puncture, whether it's from a prickle or perhaps a small slice from a rock. The sealant's not going to be able to do its job because there's not going to be any there. I highly suggest you top it up either through the valve or by cracking the bead and flipping the tire off, tipping a bit more in. You will definitely be thankful that you did if you do, unfortunately, get that puncture during the race. Lubricating your chain is something that you should be doing regularly, and you are definitely going to want to do it either the night before or the morning of the race. It not only helps prevent excess chain wear, it's going to help your drivetrain to run smoother, and it'll even help your gears shift better too. Now, I've been using a wax-based lube recently, and I rate it. It doesn't attract much dust in the dry. It lasts a long time in the wet. It's a little bit of a pain to set up because a wax won't stick to an oily or greasy chain. But as long as you clean your chain well and degrease it before the first time you put the wax lube on, you won't have any issues, and it is really simple to use. The speed wobbles are not the only wobbles that we want to try to avoid having on our bike. Some parts have a tendency to develop movement where there's not supposed to be any, and the quicker that you can find and fix that movement, the better. One of the most common places you'll find it is in the wheels or the hubs. Now, the way to find it is to wobble the wheels from side to side. And if you can feel any movement or hear any clicking, that's a sign that something's not quite right. It might be a simple fix like tightening up your axles, but it could also mean that your bearings need to be tightened or that perhaps your bearings are wearing out. Now, if that's the case, get onto it quickly because it's only going to get worse. And if you don't get on top of it, you could end up doing more damage than you need to, which is not good. Another part that can have a little bit of movement in it is the headset up here. The way we test for that is by putting the front brake on and rocking the bike back and forth. Now, at this point, you should be able to feel a clicking through the handlebars if you have an issue. The other thing you can do is put your hand over the headset where the steering goes through the frame and see if you can feel it there as well. If you can't feel anything, it could also be your forks down here where the upper tube goes into the lower tube. If you can feel some movement in there, this can be normal on the lower end forks. If you have a higher end fork on your bike, you may need to replace the bushings inside there as well. If it's your headset, it's generally a fairly simple fix. Not going to go into that now, but your friendly mechanic should be able to help you out pretty quickly with that one. Now, the last movement that we're going to test for today is movement in the rear suspension of a dual suspension bike. Now, this clearly isn't a dual suspension bike, but the way that you would test for it is usually you would lift the back end of the bike up by the seat. Now, we're not trying to lift the rear wheel off the ground. We're just trying to take the weight off of it. And if there's any play there, you'll generally feel that click. It could be that your pivot bolts need to be tightened, which is a really simple fix. It could be that they're starting to wear out a little bit. It could be your bearings that are wearing out, and it could be the bushings in the shock. No matter what it is, if it's not that simple, tighten your bolts fix, take it to your mechanic and get it sorted out, because it's going to get worse rapidly and it will really undermine the performance of your bike. Okay, so if you are running tubes or tubeless in your tires, it pays to pump them up a few nights before your race or even your ride, and just check them again in the morning. If they've lost any sort of significant pressure overnight, you're going to want to get on top of that, because even your tires dropping a couple of PSI during the race event is going to expose you to excess risk of getting flats, mainly through pinching your tube or potentially slicing your tire if you're hitting rocks or square edges really hard. So I recommend pumping up your tires early in the week before your race event so that you can identify whether you have an issue in time to take it to someone to either help you out or get the parts you need to fix it yourself. Well, that wraps it up for us today. I hope that it's been helpful and insightful. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. Otherwise, you can reach out to us via email. It's info@headforthehills.net.au. We are here to help, so please feel free to contact us with any questions that you have. Other than that, all the best with your preparations. We'll see you on the trails.